Since childhood, I haven't been able to resolve conflicts. And, to be honest, I didn't even know that they could be resolved. In my world, everything was either good or silent. When I had an argument with a friend, over a toy, a notebook, attention, I simply stopped talking to her. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't know what to do. I remember my mother saying, "Don't start. Keep quiet. A girl should be smart, not argue." And I kept quiet. I learned to smile even when I was upset and to walk away when it hurt. Silence became my way of surviving. I often changed friends at school. Today we are inseparable. Tomorrow I walk past them as if we never shared headphones or laughed in class. I remember how one of them, Sarah, cried in the locker room and asked, "What did I do?" And I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know how to say, "You hurt me." I just felt that things had turned cold between us, and I left. It seemed easier that way. If I just disappeared, the pain would go away faster. I wouldn't have to explain. I wouldn't have to listen to someone's excuses. I built walls around myself, thin, almost transparent, but very strong. And each of them was called self-defense. Now, looking back, I realized that this was my first lesson in running away. The little girl who didn't know how to talk about her pain grew up to be a woman who never learned how to stay. At the time, it seemed to me that leaving was a sign of strength. That strong people don't ask, don't come back, don't explain. But in reality, it was just fear. Fear of being rejected, misunderstood, ridiculed. And with each departure, a void grew inside me. This habit of leaving without talking became my way of surviving. And I didn't even know that one day it would destroy everything I called love. When I became a teenager, everything only got worse. The world became louder, people became more complicated, and feelings became stronger. But my coping mechanism remained the same. If it hurts, walk away. If you're scared, pretend you don't care. In high school, I fell in love for the first time. His name was Michael. He was one of those guys who smiled with his eyes. We listened to the same music, sat in the school stadium after class, and dreamed about the future. It seemed to me that this was a real connection. But one day he went to a party without me. No big deal, right? But for me, it was a betrayal. I didn't say a word. I just stopped answering his calls. He didn't understand what was going on. He ran after me in the hallways, asking, "Are you mad?" And I smiled and walked by, as if I didn't feel anything. It was easier that way. Easier than admitting, "I'm hurt because I feel unwanted." After Michael, there were others. Josh, then Andrew. Every time something went wrong, I disappeared. Just unfollow, delete. Next. No conversations. No attempts to understand. I thought that was independence. Not letting anyone hurt me. In reality, I just didn't know how to be vulnerable. I didn't know I could say, "I'm hurting but I want to talk." It seemed like weakness. In my world, a strong woman is the one who leaves first. Sometimes my friends would ask, "Don't you miss him?" I would laugh and say, "No, of course not." But at night, I would turn on the music and flip through old photos until I fell asleep with my phone in my hand. I missed him. I just didn't know how to admit it. Not to myself or to anyone else. That was the beginning of my cycle. Loving, running away, loving again, running away again. Each time, I promised myself that next time would be different. That I would talk, explain, try. But as soon as the tension arose, everything inside me tightened, and a voice said, "Just leave. It's safer." And I left. At the time, I didn't understand that this instinct was not strength, but fear. That behind every goodbye of mine was an unspoken, "Help me understand how to stay." The first time I got married, I was too young. I was 23. His name was Tom. We met at work. He was calm, attentive, with that rare kind of confidence that doesn't overwhelm, but rather warms you. At the time, I thought that was what reliability was. After several years of endless dates, flirting and disappointments, he seemed like a safe haven. We got married quickly. It was a small ceremony in the garden, my parents cried, and I thought, finally, I won't be alone. But, as it turned out, being together and being understood are not the same thing at all. At first, everything was calm, even too calm. Tom didn't know how to argue. When I got angry, he remained silent. When I started to speak louder, he just went into another room. And the more he fell silent, the louder I became. And then, I fell silent too. I tried to explain that I needed more intimacy, conversation, emotion. But every time he distanced himself, I felt useless. And my old mechanism kicked in again. Walking away. Only now I couldn't just delete the contact. We were married. We lived together, slept in the same bed. And then he appeared. Not on purpose, not as a plan, not as a betrayal, as a consolation. One of my colleagues, with whom we had lunch in a cafe near the office. He listened. He asked questions. He laughed at my jokes when Tom had long since stopped listening. It seemed to me that I was alive again when I was with him. I didn't think it was cheating. I was just looking for warmth. Looking for conversation, a glance, attention. Things I was missing at home. But at some point, I realized that I had already left in my mind. When Tom found out, he didn't yell. He just asked, "Why didn't you tell me you were unhappy?" And I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know how. All my life, I had run away when things got tough, and now I was running away again, only this time from my own marriage. I packed my things and left. No drama, no scandal. Just silence. I told myself, it'll be better this way. But at night, in the empty apartment, I felt for the first time that it wasn't relief. It was loneliness. I didn't understand then that Tom wasn't the problem. The problem was me. My fear of speaking up, my constant running away. After my first divorce, I swore to myself, I won't make the same mistakes. I'll learn to speak up. I'll be honest. I even went to a psychologist, read books on communication, and wrote in a journal. It seemed like I was growing up, maturing. And then I met Mike. He was different. Cheerful, open, talking about everything at once. It was easy with him, as if the air had become cleaner and the city around us brighter. I thought, this is it, my second chance. We quickly got together, rented a small apartment, and built rituals together. Sunday breakfasts, evenings watching TV series, laughter and chatter until midnight. But old habits die hard. When the first disagreements arose between us, Mike was sometimes late, sometimes forgot what he had promised. I felt something tighten inside me. A voice in my head whispered, "Run. Again. Leave." It's easier than explaining. I tried to fight it. At first, through conversations, letters, long messages. But the more I tried to be open, the scarier it became inside. I was afraid that if I said too much, he wouldn't understand me, would be disappointed, would leave. And then I met him again. Him, a new person who listened, laughed, asked questions as if it were the most important thing in the world. I know it sounds terrible. I fell into another moral trap. And every time it happened, I convinced myself, I'm not cheating on Mike. I'm just looking for conversation. But the truth was that I was running away again. I was choosing the easy way out again, instead of staying and explaining, talking, feeling the pain and living through it. And here's what I realized then. People aren't to blame for us losing them. I lost them myself. Not because they were bad, but because I didn't know how to stay when things got tough. I didn't know how to be vulnerable. And every time I left, I promised myself, next time will be different. But the cycle repeated itself like a broken record. Each time, I wasn't leaving people. I was leaving myself, leaving my fear of pain, leaving the fact that I would have to say things I didn't know how to say. Now, looking back, I understand one thing. I never cheated on men in the usual sense of the word. I was cheating on myself. Every time I ran away from conversation, from pain, from responsibility for relationships, I left a part of myself behind. And it gradually became a habit, almost natural. Each of these stories began the same way. First, warmth, laughter, the feeling that finally someone understood. Then, a small crack, a little silence, a minor misunderstanding. And inside me, the old mechanism kicked in. Escape. No explanations. No fighting, no asking. Just disappearing, as I had done all my life. I thought I was looking for love. In fact, I was looking for a way to cope with my own anxiety. A way not to feel, not to hurt, not to be rejected. And every time I left, it seemed like salvation. But it was only salvation for a moment. Then there was emptiness. An emptiness that could not be filled with anything but honesty with myself. The most frightening realization did not come suddenly. It came quietly, in moments when I was alone. In an empty apartment, surrounded by old photographs, letters, and text messages that I had once sent and never received a reply to. I realized that running away had become a habit stronger than love. And that this fear of speaking, this fear of staying, had destroyed everything I called happiness. But with this realization came relief. Because now I know there is a chance to change everything. I can learn to speak, even if it's scary. I can stay, even if it's hard. I can live through the pain instead of ignoring it. And most importantly, I can stop betraying myself. Every time I remember my departures, I remember a little girl who was afraid of being misunderstood, who shut her mouth and walked away from her friends, from boys, from her husband. And I want to say to her, I see you. I hear you. And we won't run away anymore. Now I am learning to speak. I am learning to stay when I want to run away. And it turned out to be more difficult than I thought. Old habits don't go away in a day. Sometimes I still feel that old panic inside when there is tension, when someone yells or is silent for too long. The old voice inside me says, run. Just leave. But I try to listen to another voice. A voice that whispers, stay. Say what you feel. Try to understand, don't run away. Sometimes I get lost in words, sometimes I cry, sometimes I repeat the same thing 1,000 times. But this is real life. Not perfect, not easy, but real. I understand that love is not a place where there is no pain. Love is a place where you can be vulnerable, where you can make mistakes, where you can say, I'm scared, I'm hurt, and still stay. And that teaches me more than all my escapes, betrayals, and departures combined. I still make mistakes. Sometimes I want to disappear. Sometimes I feel old habits pulling at me like a shadow. But now I notice them in time. I can stop. I can say, I'm afraid but I'm staying. And that's already a victory. I started a new life not because I found the perfect partner or because my problems disappeared. I started a new life because I learned to be honest with myself. I started a new life because for the first time I can say, I'll stay, no matter what. And this feeling is incredibly strong. Every day I feel closer to myself, closer to true love. True because it starts inside me, not in the person next to me. Now, when I think back on my previous departures, I see them as lessons. They were painful, they were difficult, but they brought me here, to myself, to honesty, and to a new ability to love without running away. And I know that I will no longer run away. Not because it's easy, but because now I can stay.